Hello, my name is Patrick Usher, and in this video I wish to discuss the use of technology during recovery from POTS when you are using the dynamic neural retraining system. This video contains highly subjective advice, but I found it helpful and it may resonate with some of you. So, the first point I want to make is that when one is sick with POTS, one tends to look at quite a few websites for support, where forums and other groups where other people also who have POTS post. And those groups can be very helpful. However, when you are rewiring the limbic system, it's really better to... No, I don't want that. It's really better to get your mind off questions of illness as much as possible. That's not to say, of course, that if there's some sort of medical emergency or there's some sort of problems that you wish to discuss with the doctor, then of course one should always do that. But in terms of, in general, day to day, it's really best to stop going to those kind of websites and to give your mind a rest from those sorts of questions and to try and encourage your brain to forget a lot of the sort of nitty-gritty details of POTS. So that's something that I'd really recommend, and that basically for the 6-month period that you are rewiring, those websites are not, you just don't visit them anymore. Close your accounts, quit the Facebook groups that may be doing anything to remind you about the illness at any level. So I'd say get off those, and the second thing about technology in general, I'll talk about how to kind of get off them, a few problems with willpower in a moment, but the second important point about technology is too much time spent on the internet, in my experience, is not conducive to recovery, and it's not conducive to doing the DNRS practice in the most effective way. I find that the less I am online, the more clear thinking and clear-headed I become, and that is definitely very helpful for the brain rewiring exercises that the DNRS requires you to do. So that's the other benefit. So in general terms, it's also important not just to be off those kind of websites which may remind you of POTS, but I think really to limit your time online in general and to allow life to become simpler, a bit more old-fashioned during recovery. And that, to get to that sense where time has actually slowed down and where the day becomes long in a nice way, which is something I remember from when I was a child, before all of this stuff took over. And there are many benefits to all of this stuff, but also many downsides which haven't really been reflected on enough. But anyway, so to allow yourself to cultivate simplicity, to cut out digital distractions. Now, there are kind of a couple of ways to do this. I'm going to discuss what I did, which worked for me, and then another suggestion which I use now. What I did at the time, when I was getting better, I was at home with my dad, and I enlisted his help with this. So I actually asked him, knowing that I didn't have willpower myself, and I really don't on a lot of things. But anyway, that I didn't have the willpower myself. I asked him to change the password on my computer. Okay, and what I said was, I'm only allowed to be on it 1 hour a day, and I have to choose that hour. And then he would give me the computer and type in the password. And he also changed the password on his computer, so I couldn't get into his computer. So that was, I'm giving away quite a lot here, but anyway, but that worked. And that meant for the whole 6 months that, apart from a couple of lapses, I was on, not just only online, in fact, an hour a day, but only on the computer an hour a day, which was great, actually. Really benefited from it. and head becomes clearer. You have more motivation for practice because the thing about technology is it sucks you in, right? So before you know it, you wake up, you reach for your smartphone, and you look at X, Y, and Z on the internet, and before you know it, it's quite some time later, and you don't really feel like doing practice because your brain has been drained from looking at all this quick-fire information. So the more you can reduce that over-taxation, as it were, of the brain through technology, the more energy and mental resources you will have for the practice, and the more of a tendency you'll be like, you'll be sitting there thinking, well, I can't look at Facebook, and I can't look at this news site and that news site, so I'm going to do my practice, right? And it helps you get into momentum more, and say to be offline. So that worked. The family member trick works, changing the password on your computer and kind of setting up some kind of agreement. And there were many days when I actually didn't go online at all, didn't use a computer at all. I got back in touch with other things like gardening. Just trying to be present, reading. I watched a lot of movies. I think I watched nearly every movie from my childhood again. And I've no shame in watching the Muppets. I think it's great. And I did that, and piano and other kind of things, other wholesome, normal activities, which were gentler. Okay, and that works. So, what was I going to say about that? Yes, I'll come to that in a moment. But in terms of another way to achieve this, if you don't have the help of someone else, there is an app you can get called Freedom, which I use now. And Freedom allows you to identify certain websites or apps which you'd like to block for certain periods of time. And the great thing about Freedom from my point of view, someone with no willpower, is you can set it up in locked mode, which means that actually once the block starts, you can't get out of it. The only way you can get out of it is by emailing technical support. So once it starts, you've no choice. So what I do now is I have identified the websites and apps which tend to be kind of, they're useful, but they tend to be my sort of ones I go to when I'm feeling a bit listless or bored. And I've blocked those most of the time apart from an hour stretch in the evening, which is when I get to use Facebook and when I get to use other apps and so on and so forth. So that's another way of doing it, is to identify the problem websites, which could include websites during recovery, where people are constantly sharing POTS symptoms and questions and discussions and so on and so forth, which doesn't help get your mind off the illness, which is very important when you're recovering. So those kind of websites could be blocked by an app like Freedom, so you actually don't have a choice. And you can set up a perpetual block on these websites. If you wanted to get off that way. And Freedom also allows you to set up a total block on the whole internet as well. So that works. Now, sometimes, very occasionally, crises do arise and you do need to be online all of a sudden. And in those cases, sometimes I've had to ring a friend to get something, or I've had to email technical support. But there's only been 2 occasions, and they were solvable with lateral thinking. But for the most part, blocks really help. You can do them cleverly and in an intelligent way that means that you still have access to the internet, so if you need something in an emergency, but at the same time, you're blocking the websites that you know may not be conducive to recovery, both from the point of view of their content and also from the point of view of how they can suck you in and really draw on brain resources which you need for your practice. I want to add another little point, which is, and I might do another video on this actually, but it is also important in recovery not to think about too much about theories of illness and reading too much about brain function or whatever it is, because you need to allow yourself to get back to doing normal things, and normal things which you enjoy. By all means, read books that give you confidence in why the DNRS works. By all means, yes, give yourself confidence. But don't just sort of oscillate between doing the practice and reading about the theory of the practice, and that being your day, because you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. It's just put in the hours of the practice and allow yourself to do things that you enjoy. One of the nicest times I had in recovery was the third and fourth month. It was summer months 2 years ago. And I had, after the 2-month mark I had of rewiring, I successfully took a flight with my dad. He lives in France. And I never thought I was going to be able to take a flight again or get out to where he lives again. And that was in itself very special. But I remember that those couple of months, like a lot of the time, I was just in my hammock, listening to the gentle breeze, and I was reading. And again, no shame in admitting, I reread all of my Asterix comics and Tintin, and that was great. Absolutely great. It was. That's the kind of thing that recovery is asking you to do. Okay, it's not. You don't need to kind of feel that intellectual need to understand absolutely everything. Once you have enough confidence, and you can remind yourself of the reasons for your confidence, just allow yourself to do the practice, and then identify activities and interests that you once had, and allow yourself to get back into them. And the less related they are to rewiring brains, the better. Let it be normal. So if you have a musical instrument, get back into that. If there's some movies particularly you've always wanted to watch, or TV series, as long as they're not violent and unhelpful for limbic system rehabilitation, get back into that. Gardening, catching up with a lot of, whatever it is you want to do, but just allow yourself to fill your day with things that are supportive, and recovery in that way can be a very gentle and pleasant process. Although of course it requires huge discipline, but you can mix the soft with the hard, as it were. So that's what I want to say about that, and I hope that proves helpful, and it may resonate with some of you. Others, may not be relevant, but I think it will be relevant to quite a few people, and it's actually reminding me now of the importance of what I'm saying. Even now, I think it is very important, and I think it is relevant for a lot of people with POTS, because their brains are in a very sensitive state, and technology is, for a sensitive brain, it really can drain you if you're not careful. So those are some thoughts, and I hope you have a nice day wherever you are, and look forward to responding to any comments you have.